Welcome to the Cherry Picker After Dark, the Patreon exclusive version of the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry. With me as always is...
I'm not being grouchy. I just want to get the tree up. Eddie of Edward is Truth.
Today, we are doing Black Christmas versus Black Christmas, the battle of the remakes.
Yeah.
We covered the original Black Christmas last year, I think. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
We love the original Black Christmas, which is 50 years old this year. I know.
Love it.
Which seems fitting a time to talk about not the original Black Christmas, but rather the two.
It'll come up.
Of course. But this is. I mean, the thing is, it's like the original Black Christmas is a masterpiece. It's if you compare it to any of these movies, it's always going to be better. The purpose of this episode is more so to kind of dissect and analyze the two remakes. So we have Black Christmas, released December 25th, 2006, and we have Black Christmas, released December 13th, 2019.
I have premises that work for both of them the way it did when we compared what was it? Oh, Valentine and My Bloody Valentine. And I used the same paragraph for both when we used to do Fright Club.
Well, yeah. Way to bury the lead. So we've mentioned this before, but Edward and I used to collaborate on a project which was on my main channel years and years ago called Fright Club. Fright Club, yeah. And
limited series.
It's I think we did about 6 or so, and then it was just like, God, the algorithm just does not like this.
It was a lot of work too.
It was a lot of work. Yeah, it was a lot of work. But that's why we have the cherry picker instead. But the premise of the concept of Fright Club was taking two similar movies and then comparing them based on a list of criteria, and also having a audience vote. So this would have been like in the community section, like the same way that we do the cherry picker now, where you just like vote like who deserves to die the most. But it was like, which movie is better? We're kind of doing the reverse of that, because here by the end of the episode we're gonna ask you which Black Christmas deserves to die the most, if that makes any sense at all. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna break each one down through 5 different criteria, and that will be story, characters, production, relevance, and kills. So those seemed like the 5 main topics to cover. I think initially when we did Fright Club, it was story, characters, production, execution, and kills. And as I was like going back over that with you, I was just like, well, what is even the difference between production and execution?
Which I think was a question you had while we were doing Fright Club. And I was like, well, production is more kind of like the setup, like all of the pre-production stuff that you set up to the point where you shoot the camera and everything. And execution is like the actual direction, the acting, the editing, maybe even distribution, if we want to go that far.
Yeah, the production quality, just in terms of like, how does everything look, sort of thing. The execution is like, how taking all the components together, how did that turn out? And I feel like those,
what was the plan? Did they miss the mark?
I mean, if I recall, it's been so long, because that was like 2021 maybe, but I think or earlier, 2020 maybe, but I don't. Those sort of fall under the same umbrella of criteria. So we decided that for this specifically, Black Christmas's relevancy is a good category, because there's a lot to talk about relevancy of these two movies, and like when they were released 100%. And kind of what kind of cultural impact they have or had. So this is going to be interesting because I don't think we're ever going to cover the Black Christmas remakes on the regular podcast. So if you're watching this right now, this is a preview of the full Cherry Picker After Dark episode. If you would like to hear the whole thing past the preview, you can head over to my Patreon account. That is patreon.com/ZackCherry, ZackCherry. Give me all the monies and you will get to enjoy not only this episode, but all the back catalog of Cherry Picker After Darks. We got a lot of great ones. But it is $5, the Freddy Krueger tier. And I mean, on top of that, you're also getting early access to all of our other episodes. So there's a lot of great stuff to get with giving your money to me. But having said that, I do want to thank several of my Patreon supporters as it is right now. So we have the Michael Myers supporters. So Kyle Beard, Maxime Rivas, Ali Hamouche, Shane Allingham, Tim McKay, Stephanie Starbright, Horace Slut95, Bruce the Genetic, Jackhammer Rando, Josh Carr, Michael Boswell, and then Ghostface supporters, Eric Champney, Sam Levy, Daniel Saturn, Baby Ghoul, Garrison Nichols, and Craig Lynn, who I just chatted with.
And applause for everybody, because I usually silently clap, and I didn't do that this time. So everybody gets applause.
You're the little fairy clap that's
me.
that you do, yeah. Thank you to all those people. Thank you to everyone who's supporting. Really appreciate it, and your support does go a long way in making this podcast possible. So we thank you for that, and the more we get, the more we do, the better it is. Yeah.
More money.
So, did you want to do the premises? The premises?
Well,
also
it's one premise. Oh yeah.
One second.
Sorry, go ahead.
And thank you. Because I always forget the flow of this. Thank you to Jason Voorhees Gallotello, who is our editor. Who we can't do this without him. And another reason why, please support the podcast so we can support our editor. But yeah. All right.
Okay. It's a collective premise. It applies to both of them, so it's vague as hell.
Okay.
But I'm going to do it anyway. A sorority house falls under the cruel, exacting eye of a still living, dark history that precedes their time in this landscape, dooming their holiday a truly black Christmas. See, it applies to both.
Very well. I was expecting something more shady, like when we did Valentine versus My Bloody Valentine. It was just like, because you just would go one premise after the other, and it was the exact same thing. It was just like a blonde woman is jerked around by her love interest.
Those two had a lot. Those two actually had a lot more in common, ironically enough, than these two Black Christmas movies. So
well, and that's actually a good starting point for story, because these two could not be more diametrically different. Like, it is night and day as to what this is, because while Black Christmas 2006 is more a remake of what the original Black Christmas is, this is just creative liberties. And it's interesting that we just covered Better Watch Out last week, because our main takeaway from that was this didn't have to be a Christmas movie. This could have just been an all-purpose, any time of the year movie. It just happened to fall on Christmas. And I feel all of that and more with Black Christmas 2019, because there's nothing inherently Christmas about this other than the fact that it is called Black Christmas and that it takes place like while school is on Christmas break.
Yeah. As far as, well, I mean, with regard to story, it's also the 2006 version is so kind of like almost contemporary neo-goth with it, with like the depths of like, human suffering and what's the reprehension, reprehensible actions, committed within just like the framework of a family. Whereas the dark history carried over it, that we, gets exposed ultimately in Black Christmas 2019 is like this long-standing patriarchy that is all about. I laughed when I rewatched it this morning when they talked about like the whole mission of Calvin Hawthorne, the namesake or the college is his namesake. Mm-hmm. So they named it after him, and he's the one with the legacy, and he's the one who's, we find out his spirit, spoilers everybody, is inhabiting all of these frat boys who are like, dead set against like letting these sorority girls live because they have to reclaim their power, which made me laugh. That like, I don't remember when, how long ago Calvin Hawthorne died or whatever, but the fact that his legacy then was to reclaim power from women was laughable to me.
There's a supernatural element to the 2019 version, which obviously the original is just more so straight up slasher in that regard, which is what the original was. And what's interesting is when this came out, when this was announced, the remake, it kind of came out of nowhere, because I don't remember hearing anything about it other than maybe like a few months before, where it was just kind of like, Blumhouse, of course, Blumhouse has acquired the rights to Black Christmas, and there's going to be another remake. And I remember the first thought I asked was, why?
Right.
And like, why do we need another Black Christmas? Because I mean, the remake, like the 2006 remake, I was never really, taken by it at all. Like, like most remakes of that era, I don't really care for. So it just sort of like, on one hand, I was just like, well, why are they making this mistake again? Especially like when we're on the heels of Halloween 2018, which I'm not also not like completely favorable towards, but I mean, it's still leaps and bounds ahead of either of these two movies. And it just seemed like if this was a trend that Blumhouse had started, would they not want to do like a Black Christmas 2019 where it's like, where is Olivia Hussey, all these years later? It's just like, is she locked in a cellar with a shotgun, just like saying like, he's waited for me, I've waited for him.
Come on,
hello.
It's the Mona. But if she, I mean, that's interesting, because that's one thing that in theory, like in intention, I can get behind Black Christmas 2019. Like, I mean, from its inception, once you know what it's about, because it brought it back to the patriarchy kind of like being this oppressive force, which I feel is really present. We discussed that thematically in the original 1974 Black Christmas. Whereas in 2006, one of the things that really came forward to me this particular screening for this pod was the matriarchy. Like, it's a matriarchal figure who's basically kind of like the first domino that sets all of the suffering. Like, because of her, Billy suffers. Because of her because Billy suffers, Agnes suffers. And then because they both kind of like, it's never really explained, but I guess because they both kind of unify over this revenge against the world, because they've been hardened by the way they were raised by their mutual mother, they decide to take it all out in madness on this sorority. So I don't know, I just kind of thought at least 2019 wanted to make a more patriarchal, oppressive figure there.
Well,
so I can respect that in theory.
Yeah. Well, just to finish my thought before, the announcement of Black Christmas 2019. So while I was kind of hesitant to see another attempt, I was also kind of like interested, because it's like, oh, okay, like let's give another chance to Black Christmas. Let's see if it has some life left in it. And then just seeing it, it kind of missed the mark for me a lot, in terms of the story, because it's like, not only was it not what I was expecting, like, because I was, where is Billy? Where is, all of the elements? I mean, there are some homages and things definitely to be found in there, but it just seemed like, I don't know what this is. I don't even feel like the story itself knows what it is as it's going through whatever it is. And I remember seeing the movie with my friend, and I hadn't like read anything about it beforehand, and we got into the theater and we were sitting there, and it was relatively sparse, like there weren't a lot of people there, and I'm just kind of like, do we know like what critics are saying about this? And I just took out my phone and looked at Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb, and it was just like, oh shit. And I just knew, like, we're not in for a good time here. But in regard to, what you mentioned about the 2006 version, because in terms of Agnes, I never got the sense that the mother mistreated her or anything. Like, it seemed like that was obviously the favorite child, because that was a thing when Billy got out and then blinded Agnes. Like the mom and the stepdad were freaking out, like they were trying to stop him, and that was what ultimately led to their demises. So I don't really know, like in terms of Agnes, that story was never clear to me. It just felt like it was just sort of very contrived just to have, like, to kind of expand on the lore. But that is something that I do credit the 2006 version for, is that it does expand on the lore. It's not just a straight up thing. They're actually exploring the story, and they're doing it within the context of Christmas. So comparatively from 2006, having this Christmas setting, actually having the theme of Christmas and this family kind of ingrained in the story itself, the 2019 version is just, it's so incidental to everything.
I'm perplexed by Agnes, because she does team up in the 2006 version. She does team up with Billy, but we never
her
really
father
have
brother.
It explained. Yeah, her father brother.
Her brother father.
And she obviously knows this. So it's interesting, kind of wondering what drove her mad enough to kind of like join forces with him when he was perceivedly, from her vantage point, the oppressive figure, because he's the one who took her eye. But I guess that's the only reason why I bring up like the oppressive mother, because she didn't seem to have a lot of warmth toward her mother either, as they sat there opening her Christmas present and everything. Her mother's just sitting there kind of watching her expectantly, like, it's a good Christmas, isn't it? Yeah, I'm making you happy. I'm doing a good job chain smoking in front of you on Christmas Eve. So, I mean, I feel like...
who plays the mother?
I don't know her by name, and I didn't recognize her. Did she look particularly familiar to you?
I don't know. I was getting and I know it's not the same actress, but remember in Batman Returns, Oswald Cobblepot's mother?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Same kind of like lovely kind of hatchet face situation. Yeah. She's played by, I can get it like in just a second, Karen Konoval, and she's only credited as Billy's mother. She doesn't even get a name. No. So how's that for
Billy's
feminism?
Mother?
Looks like the most recent significant thing that she did was in the new Planet of the Apes trilogy. She played Maurice in all three movies.
Maurice?
You got me. I don't remember.
I haven't seen any of them.
I've only seen every one of them once.
I've only seen the musical.
You damn dirty ape.
No, I've actually seen a few of the original ones, and I saw the Tim Burton one, and whatever like the new, like the first one was of the new wave. But anyway, so Agnes was born if I'm remembering correctly, 1982.
Yes, or conceived. Probably born as well, but conceived.
Well, either way, because like this is taking place, I'm assuming in real time in 2006. So it's just like, how old is Agnes supposed to be then? Because it's like looks like
24. And she looks
she looks rough.
she looks like she's been through a lot. And she's played by a male actor as well, who was actually a member of the crew. I looked it up. He's not a professional actor. He never pursued acting before. He's played like a few things and some other things that he worked on the set of because they're like, oh, you've got acting experience. Go play this thing.
Well, when we first see Agnes, I'm just like, that's a dude. But then later on, I was just like, oh no, it's a woman. But now that you've confirmed that,
grown Agnes is played by.
Oh yeah, like little 10-year-old or however old.
That's a little girl actor.
Yeah.
Who's grown up.
Okay, no, I'm just trying to remember the time. Yeah, because 1991 is when all hell breaks loose in the house. I really enjoyed. I'm just being very hyperbolic there. I enjoyed the way that the backstory was kind of like, I guess, like sectioned apart in the story. It was just like, Andrea Martin starts explaining it, and then like we kind of circle back to it. So like every new segment of year, we're kind of revisiting a new thing. So it's not like we're stuck in the flashback for so long. It doesn't feel as exposition-y. And they found a way to do it that wasn't like so contrived in a way that just like, well, let me just like tell you all about this, where we're just like going through it. Like they did the best they could to just like infuse it into the story as naturally as possible for what it was.
Well, this probably touches more on production, so I won't linger on it. But what I will say is one thing that I really embrace about the movie. It is on the page, I feel, is the melodramatic feel of everything. Like everything feels like so high octane, so operatic, so theatrical, so in your face, and not nuanced. That everyone kind of gets to take their moment, and and anytime someone has a moment of exposition, they get to like kind of stand in the spotlight and be like, it was a dark night on Christmas many years ago. And then, and then we go, and for that, that's actually something that used to annoy me before the existence of the 2019 version, because I only had the 1974 version, which I love. I love the authenticity of it. I love the nuance of it. So when I saw this, I was kind of like, oh, what'd they do? But now that we have the 2019, which I feel is much blander, even in story, like if we're just going to go back to story, in terms of like the direction that they went, again, like I can see the intent to tell a story that I think is vital in its bones, like in its like the exoskeleton of the story. I can understand why somebody might pitch this in a room and it might make somebody want to invest in the franchise again and put another one of these out. That said, there's something about the way, like you mentioned, like the flashbacks and stuff. They are palatable in 2006. 2019, it's more like the flashbacks of trauma in a way that I don't want to flash back to, because we're talking about assault and about things that are even more graphic. Like 2006, in a way, actually handled their assault, which is, the mother, Billy's mother, on him when he was 12 years old. It was unseemly and gross, but we didn't see anything. All we did was see feet go up the stairs, and her feet stand in front of him and her drop her nightgown, and everything else you can put together in your head, and I appreciated that.
No, it's really good storytelling. I think that like the differentiation between 2006 to 2013 really comes down to show, don't tell, because there is a lot of visual storytelling in 2006. And 2019 is all exposition. It's all exposition. There's and we can touch more upon that when we get to characters and stuff. But 2006 is also like comparatively a lot of fun with the story. And there's not a moment in 2019 where I'm having fun. I'm miserable the entire time. Like I'm just like waiting for this to end. And quite frankly, I find it very boring. That's, there's a few things that are like the biggest offenses, like, continuity and logistical things is one of them. But like, if a movie is boring, I think that's kind of like the death knell. And I mean, there are movies that are bad, but good, and then there's movies that are bad and boring. And I've talked about Halloween Resurrection being a movie that is bad and boring, and I stand by that. But I would watch Halloween Resurrection any day out of the week over Black Christmas 2019, because at least there's a modicum of fun to be had in that movie.
I agree 100% with that point, because I've seen Halloween Resurrection multiple times of my own volition, not even just for this pod or any other pod. I've just kind of been like, oh, all right, it's time. And then, whereas with Black Christmas 2019, I would not have returned to it if it weren't for this podcast. But I mean, I was glad that I did, because it kind of just confirmed my suspicions of what a rewatch would be. It was exactly what I thought it would be. It just kind of gave me a few things, a few nuggets here and there that I can kind of pull, which we'll get to like later when we discuss the other topics. Where I'm just kind of like, well, again, like, I mean, in terms of the story, I like the bones of it. It's just that everything weaving in between that I kind of, the specific choices that they made that leave me not even questioning why. I feel like I understand why. I just don't agree that this is the most interesting or even the scariest or the most fun. It's not anything. I think you're right. It's just kind of like flat and dull and predictable. That's the cardinal sin for me, I think, with this movie, is that I'm just kind of like, ugh. I'm not surprised by pretty much anything that happens on the screen. It veers on tonally like a 1990s Lifetime TV movie for me. Like, I mean, Meredith Baxter Burney, like
a
level, and yet not even Meredith Baxter Burney, like maybe one of the worst ones, maybe one that they gave to like Kate Jackson or someone, like I mean, because it's not, and so for those reasons, it doesn't feel like progress. I think one thing that we made mention of when we were discussing a 1974 version, was that, so progressive for its time, and 50 years later still feels that way. It still feels poignant in the topics that it handles. 2019 takes those topics and I feel just kind of pushes them a little bit more forward, and a little bit more, not mindfully but consciously.
Well, this might be more in terms of relevancy. But just to cap off anything else I need to say about the story, I noticed that both films kind of infuse an element of mystery, not successfully, but there's almost this idea of like kind of red herrings of in 2006, who could like Agnes be? Sort of thing, because they play that with some of the sorority sisters, most notably the I forget her name, but the one with like the big thick glasses that like magnify her eyes, who she gets
Eve.
Decapitated. Eve, yeah, because she's sort of strange, and they're like, well, her mother was a legacy, so they're trying to do this like maybe you're the killer kind of thing.
We even move like from a shot of, I can't remember if it's like baby her to her or like her to baby her, to kind of almost imply like, oh, I bet Eve is Agnes, but not really.
It's a little too on the nose to be that, but there is this idea, because like we find out very early. I mean, it could be surmised that like, okay, Agnes and Billy are at play here. So just the idea of like, who is Agnes? Is Agnes, someone who's, in the house? And I think there even the Lee character, like there's some like red herring moments with her, but I feel like it's already handled unsuccessfully, because at that point we've already been introduced to Agnes. So I don't think that like timing wise they really, thought that out very well. And then in the 2019 version, because I mean, like the whole conceit is like that it's like, I guess they call it Black Mask, which is what they call the killer or killers in this, and I don't know like, it didn't really read to me, but reading the IMDb trivia, there were several scenes that were like digitally altered, whether it was like for the trailers or before, where they had like, I know specifically in the trailer they pulled off the mask, and rather than the guy's face underneath, it was like the bust of Calvin Hawthorne. And then there were moments where like a door would close, or like the girl was like brushing her teeth, and then she would like bend down to spit, and the killer was standing behind her that wasn't there. And they were talking about how they wanted to, you know, make us think that like maybe this is like the boyfriend was the killer, who you quoted at the top of the episode.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we can't show the killer behind the door because Nate was downstairs.
Yeah.
And they're like, I guess the goal was to make us, the audience, think that it could possibly be him. And like, the thing is, it's just like, at no point in the movie did I ever feel like this was a murder mystery. It was just like, okay, it's just like something fishy is going on here, but I don't really care to know. I don't, like, whatever the outcome is going to be, probably won't be that interesting. And lo and behold, it wasn't.
Yeah, I also feel like story-wise for 2019, there's a key beat where there's a decision that's made, like that they're going to go to this the sorority. I forget their name, but the sorority that's featured, Mu Kappa, is going over to this event that's hosted by DKO, the fraternity house where the guy who assaulted Riley is, like reigns supreme, I guess, and I remember being perplexed the first time I watched it because it wasn't that abundantly clear to me why they were going when their friend had been assaulted by this guy, and she wasn't even going to be a part of it. Like, it was just going to be like 4 girls who were going to go up dressed like the Mean Girls, and they were going to do this little a cappella number with no accompaniment that isn't awkward at all. I'm even perplexed now as I'm explaining it after this second screening, because I was like, oh, so I guess the plan was to sing these lyrics in unison about the assault and kind of nail these guys publicly, like point the finger and say, we see you, and everybody else knows what we're doing and they're on our side and now we win, which I had huge issue with. But then all of a sudden at the last minute, Riley has to stand in for, is it Helena? I think. Yeah, or is she I get, they are so, we'll get on it in characters, but she has to sit in for somebody who's sick, who almost got assaulted. She prevented it, and then she has to step in, and she's the one who takes the stage and sings, but sings in the first person. So I'm like, well, were they going to sing about Riley specifically, or was one girl just going to play a girl who was supposed to be, I mean, it was so unclear what the conceit was, and I'm just like, if you're trying to create a more authentic representation of like what it is to be a young woman in a sorority in today's world, dealing with the problems that they would in 2019 with 2019 eyes on, make it a little bit clearer. I don't know what I see your vague intention. I don't understand exactly how this is supposed to go and what the intention. It didn't play for me.
I was thinking, I mean, and because a lot of this does bleed into character, so we'll just say this and we'll wrap up story.
Okay.
But I had a lot of questions too, like, why are they going to this house where this has happened? Like, why go back into the belly of the beast, sort of thing, and subject yourself to your abuser and all that. But also, it's just like I was just trying to like understand the scene and like I guess the context of everything, because I guess they sort of like have a green room set up in one of the bedrooms, and Helena drops out and gives her slutty Santa costume to Riley. So it's like, you imagine like she would have had to change into this, and I'm just thinking like, you went to a year ago or however long it was, you went to a fraternity where you were sexually assaulted, and now you've gone back there and you're just they're basically accommodating you. They're letting you use this space in this fraternity to do your thing, where you're now taking your clothes off and changing into another thing, and you're not like concerned, especially with like Black Christmas and the idea of like holes in places where people can like spy on you, or I guess that was more of a 2006 thing, but like, or even hidden cameras, like that, like why are they there? But and that bleeds into a lot of other questions about like why that I'll have for characters. But that was one of the major things. It's just like why are you there? Why are you trusting of these fraternity brothers in any way, shape, or form, in spite of like what you're planning to do?
And how do you win? Like the aftermath is you won, you got him. It's like that's not how it works.
So
sorry.
No, it doesn't at all.
And I feel like other young women would understand that.
Yeah, you know? There's a lot of holes in everything here, and it's just like that's the thing. We'll discuss. I mean, it's story beats, but we can talk about it in the other categories. Yes. But I just want to ask you for in terms of story, which reigns supreme? Which is the worst one?
Obviously 2019. No, 2006. Yes.
2006 has a better story, absolutely. And it does. I mean, it's more coherent, more fun, and also like Christmassy. It feels like Christmas.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah, let's move on to characters.
Okay.
Where to begin?
We're already kind of on it. We were moving there with 2019, so let's just continue that, and then we'll upswing into 2006. Cards on the table. Sorry. No, I mean, just in light of like talking about the atmosphere that they're moving into and the characters, like what would be motivating them to be there. The one who kind of upsets me the most with the way she was written is Chris.
I agree.
Because she's the one who keeps getting in Riley's face saying things like, it's time to be a fighter again. About going up on a stage, scantily clad, and gyrating around for a room of horny, frat guys and maybe some other sorority sisters who were there. I couldn't really make out the crowd. And then later, like right before, when she like freezes up because he's in the room. The guy who assaulted her walks in and doesn't he? I don't even remember if he winks or blows a kiss or something.
So
just
his
really
thing, and I forget the character's name. It was like maybe Tyler or something like.
It's not worth remembering.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a character that's not worth remembering because the character is
Brian
barely.
Huntley. I wrote it down. Brian Huntley. Sorry.
Yeah, the character is barely a character. And the only thing that, like, I guess I don't know if he's actually chewing on gum, like he actually, like the actor had a piece of gum in his mouth, but every time his face is on screen, he's just sort of like chewing. And it's just his thing. And I guess, like, that was a choice that was made by the director or something, just like, let's make this guy really smarmy, that he's always chewing on gum or something. And it's just like, he doesn't really have very much dialogue, like I don't think until like the end of the movie, but it's like that's how you know he's a villain, because he's chewing on gum in a very like in a very you used this word once before and I will not remember what it was, but there's you used when you were describing Ashley St. Ives in the Beyond the Valley of the Dolls episode.
Oh, I don't remember. Sorry.
But you also said that she was smarmy, and that's like definitely like part of this character as well.
Lascivious?
Yes.
Maybe? Okay.
That's what it was. Yes. Lascivious.
I'm just going in the Rolodex in my head. What would I have said about that character?
Yeah.
That she hasn't come with Brian?
And that's just like the sort of like the vibe that we're given in him. And it's just like there's absolutely no nuance to anything or anyone in this movie. And like that character in particular, I feel like, again, this goes back to the notion of show, don't tell, where this movie is all tell, because most of what we experience about these characters, what we learn about them, is just told to us by other people. So even though we see this guy and he's always chewing gum, it's the other dude who's like in the cafe that's just like, Ryan's really, like after everything you did to Ryan. So we're like only hearing this backstory through this proxy. And it's the same thing with Chris, who I agree, like she's just awful, but like her whole thing is that she's mounting this crusade against Professor Carrie Elwes.
Yes.
I can't even remember anyone's name.
He's Professor Gelson.
Gelson.
So just think of the market.
Yeah. And market?
Yeah, Gelson. You don't have Gelson's Market in Canada?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
Not that I know.
Sorry.
Of. But
okay.
Yeah, it's like she's going on about this thing. Like I guess like she has an issue with them. The two characters don't have a scene together until the very end when she lights him on fire. But every time we see her, she's bitching about him. When we see him, he's like talking about how she's making his life very difficult. So it's just like, why are we employing this type of storytelling with these characters by just having other people fill us in on information? And it just like, it's so uninteresting. It's really hard to follow. And it's like, I don't even know these people's names, first of all. So it's like, it's you know, trying to keep up like who's talking about who. But that's just not a way to write characters. And Chris specifically, just her whole thing, and this goes back to what I was saying about like why go to the frat house if this is where like why go back to the belly of the beast? Why go like did you not research this school before you attended it to know anything about the founder or these things? Like you just showed up and now you're like, well, fuck this, and I'm gonna mount this crusade against everything that this school stands for. Like that's like going to like signing up for a Christian college and then petitioning that they have to get rid of any sort of religious iconography or anything because it is offensive to you and your brand.
Right. Also, in terms of Chris, like I think the thing that bothered me the most about her is that there are a handful of people who champion this movie, and we'll talk about them when we talk about the relevance because there's some real important points to make. But so I feel like the people who do champion this movie tend to bring up the fact that it's made by women for women and everything. And I say with regard to this character, I feel like it demonizes her feminism and her activism, and it makes her a bit of a bully, and it makes her blind to the cause that she supposedly seems to be so invested in and care about when she tends to forget her friend. And the thing is, I feel like that choice was made consciously. I don't think it was a mistake. I think that the filmmakers were trying to make a point about where activism can be misled when you get into like your banner making and your grandstanding and everything like that. But I feel like it could have been done in a much more poignant way that actually makes a point about the relevancy of activism and of equality and of making space for your friends to have their feelings about violent acts that were committed against them, that they're still that they can still be stalled by. I wish that there were a sensitivity, or at least a moment where the lack of sensitivity was addressed in Chris in a way that wasn't just a shouting match. That's the thing that pissed me off, where I felt like you're taking you're taking topics that with characters, things that have happened to characters, to people, and you're using them in a very broad way and speaking to them in a way that just uses them but doesn't really say anything about them. That's why I feel like I keep saying consciously but not mindfully. I wish there had been more sensitivity towards that. And also with regard to character, there's something about that black stuff that, well, let me put it this way. I hate that I don't know whether Brian and his act that he committed a year ago was a product of he's an asshole or a product of he had the black stuff like coursing through him at the time. Because you know what I hate about not knowing is that neither answer satisfies me. If it was the black stuff coursing through him, I feel like it completely takes the teeth out of the actual threat that men can impose in the lives of women in reality. And then if it wasn't, then why have it at all? Why can't it just be about brutality that's born in human beings, not because they're possessed? I understand there's some symbolism to it. I think I even wrote down the black stuff that the frat guys bled is probably supposed to represent male toxicity being blended into the systems of each individual male to have them dissemble into misogynistic killers. But it ends instead up making them something other than human, which takes the teeth out of the threat that actual men impose. Basically the point.
Yeah, I agree, and that's how I felt when the movie ended, and just like all kind of like because the thing is like this movie is so aggressively political, like it's so ham-fisted in the way that it tackles this message, and that's why it's just not fun. But like with the characters in particular, there is this like ambiguity of not knowing like who is guilty and who is innocent, and like obviously this is it Brian or Ryan? Brian is shown to like have agency. Like that's the thing, like some of them are shown to like have this agency, like Brian and the other guy who we see at the coffee shop, and he's also the one that's in bed with Helena. I guess like he's connected to her. Like they're the ones that are shown to have agency, whereas like Landon is like almost like he's like hypnotized when it like comes over him. So it just like and all of the other extras, it just seems like they're just sort of like under this spell. So there's no consistency in who is affected by it and how. And I feel like that's just sort of like an easy out for them to just be like, to have their cake and eat it too. But in doing so, it's like, you're right. It doesn't like neither answer satisfies like whatever you're looking for here. And I think that the by the end, I'm just sort of like left thinking, rather than like feeling like triumphant for Riley or anything like that, I'm just thinking, you just murdered a bunch of frat boys who are under some sort of black ooze spell. So my thoughts and prayers are with those poor frat boys who came to this university, who actually looked into it to see what it was before they showed up at the school, and were just like, well, I want to be part of a, like I want to pledge this fraternity, and then all of a sudden, well, now you're possessed, and now you have no control over your body. We're forcing you to do these violent acts and like murder people and all this, and completely taking away your agency. And also you're gonna burn to death in this room. Like if like Riley had like the sense to just be like, well, it's not them. They have no control over themselves, which was clear, like to me was very clear that that's what was being conveyed, at least by the way that Landon, especially in that moment while she's barricading the door and trying to murder all these people by leaving them to burn to death, and he's saying, that wasn't me, I had no control. And she's like, we'll talk about this later. And it's just like, well, maybe you should listen to what he's saying now, because that actually holds some weight for what you're about to do. So when she goes out there and they're turning around and watching this place burn down, I'm not thinking like, like stick it to the man or whatever. I'm just thinking like, you just completely fucked this up. You just killed all those people.
You know what? I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I didn't even think about that. It bothered me for sure, but now I'm just thinking in terms of like, it would have been interesting if they need to have the black stuff coursing through these guys' veins. What probably would have turned me around on the whole use of it would be if it had touched Landon out of all the guys, and once it touched him, if it didn't work on him. And if he could have like resisted it, if he was like fighting it, maybe there's something that's like now got a grip on him, but he can actually kind of like fight it, because then everything that you're saying ceases to be true, because like, well, all those guys, they were under a grip of something, but you have to kind of consent. You have to kind of make a pact with the devil. Like, yes, I do want to be this powerful killer, and this thing is going to make me, kind of like impenetrable or harder to kill. Maybe, I don't know. All of that would have made it more interesting.
That they made the choice to do it. Like they weren't.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, we see them in there earlier on, in this auditorium in the middle of this fraternity when she like spies in the room, and they're obviously like lined up to do this. So I mean, it suggests that, you know, they are making the choice to like, yes, like put it in me, but with like that's all negated when Landon shows up there at the end and just sort of comes under the thrall of it. So it's just like, again, it's just like they not really having like being able to pinpoint like your characters within this movie. It's just like it makes it confusing. It makes it less enjoyable. It's infuriating.
There's a law. The thing is, again, I wish that there would have been more mindfulness, because there's a law that says if you, like, it would have been a perfect point to make in a movie about sororities and fraternities. There is a law that states that if someone consents to be with you and then you drug them to make them more agreeable, more malleable or whatever, it is still assault, because once someone takes away your ability to say no at any given point, or tries to, like, you know, sweeten the deal or whatever for them, you have lost your agency. It is still assault. So it makes me think, like, you still take the teeth out of these guys and like what they're doing, and it coming from like them, which is a very important thing to say, because there's now it's like they're drugged. Now it's like, even though they said yes once, does that mean that they wanted it to go this far? Does that mean they wanted to kill all of these girls? Did they completely understand what they were consenting to? I'm not even going to come to their defense, but I'm saying it's a sliver in the storytelling. It's like a crack in the armor, you know? It's something, and the second you get that chip, like the whole thing just starts to creak away. And I find that this whole movie is like that, unfortunately. The only interesting character to me, actually, the entire time was it Helena? The one who betrays them at the end?
Yeah.
Can't even remember. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That was the first time something happened on screen where I was like, oh, didn't see that coming. Okay, and then I was wondering, like, okay, did she take the black stuff and that's why she's doing this, or is she just a sellout? And I think she's a sellout. But
I think, well, because this was on the IMDb trivia, so the actress who plays her, I think that she read for a different role, or it might have been that character, and the character was just supposed to like die or something, but then they really liked her, and I did too. I think I thought that she, like, you know, just being an interesting character, but also performance-wise, like, it felt like, you know, she was at least, you know, having some fun with like this breadcrumb of a thing that, like, you know, an actor can play with, and you know, in the midst of this like dreadful, not fun movie. But anyway, they I guess they had written or just changed the character just to like have this reveal at the end to you know, let her play with that more, just to give her the opportunity. So that was a thing that was kind of infused into the story at the last minute, and I guess it's supposed to represent like the enablers, like the
the pick-me's of the world.
But I'd agree with that. Like, she was the only one that was just like, I mean, I was just wanted the movie to be over, but I mean, if there's anyone that like probably should have had more to do, it could have been her, because like she's sort of taken out of the movie for most of it. She just shows up at the end there.
The only thing that makes me think she wasn't under the thrall that all the guys were under was her surprise when they decide to turn on her, when she's like, wait, what's my thing doing there? Because I think if she were under the thrall, wouldn't she not be even all that coherent? Like, would she be able to perceive any belongings that are hers unless she was, you know, putting on airs, just kind of like, hey, we're friends, come over to this place, you'll be safe with me, you know? I don't know, that's another thing, I don't understand how the hive mind works. It's very sloppy. It's just that was one thing that I saw, continual criticism from male, female, and possibly non-binary, I don't know, people who I could not readily identify what their sex was when I was reading IMDb reviews of this, because I was very interested. What is the collective? I know most people hate it, but why? What are they? What's the rhetoric that we tend to get lost in? And one thing that a lot of people used, across the board was sloppy, just very sloppy. And I agree 100% as far as the handling of the characters and what they mean to each other and the specificity. Whereas with 2006, oh yeah, sorry, if you want to make another point, go for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just like there's more I wanted to say, like the Landon character as well, because we've seen this sort of like archetype. I mean, the one that like comes to mind the most is Bill Skarsgård's character in Barbarian. Where he's kind of he does that thing where he's just like, hey, there's this bottle of wine here, I thought that maybe we could both have it. I didn't open it yet, like I was gonna wait till you were here, just so you know, because I know that that's a thing, like just like that, like having to talk it out loud and just like taking the piss out of everything, and just and that's this character. It's just like so meek and timid, but like to a point where it's just like, this is not attractive at all. Like it's so self-effacing, of just like I don't know about that. I'm just trying to be mindful of you and respectful of you, and it's just like I don't know what it was. I'm trying to remember it. It was an interviewer somewhere. I'm not sure who it was, but some female celebrity. It might have been a podcast, and she's just like, no, I want you to disrespect me. So it's like, this guy is not getting laid by Riley. He's not getting laid by anyone. Like, the movie ends, and there's no future for this couple. Like, that's the thing. Like, this storyline of, like, their relationship was going nowhere. Every time this guy showed up on screen, it was like the thing where it's just like, is this a red herring? Like, is he one of the killers? And it just like got to a point where just like, oh, this is awful. And at the end, when he's just like, you have to know, and she's like, we'll talk about this later. And it's just like, God, no chemistry, no sparks, no nothing.
Yeah, and let me say the same thing in a different way also, because I usually do. Because I agree with you as far as like Landon and his presence. I mean, yeah, he's rather bland, but I also just, the thing that broke my heart was his first interaction with Riley. I actually found the most compelling, and even the second one when they got to know each other a little bit better. I was like, it's really sad that in a movie called Black Christmas, the first most relevant seeming exchange is between our main girl and some guy she likes who she doesn't know. And I'm just kind of like, I wish I was a little bit more captivated by the sisterhood, by, you know, like because I mean, they tried. I could see them trying. It didn't work on me seeing her give that comb to fucking Helena and the moving through the thing. I'm like, I got more warmth watching the opening of Legally Blonde. That's a sorority I want to belong to, you know?
Well, I'm just going to reiterate something that you said when we actually, way back when, we did a reaction of this on Patreon, which was, I don't know what happened to it. I don't think it exists anymore. It might be there. I don't remember, but
there's like tiny clips in my Instagram. I have like a little sliver.
Right.
That if anybody wants to watch, go look on my profile. It's there.
And fun. Yeah, that your note about everything, because they're just talking. Like that's the thing. They're coming downstairs. And they're just like, oh, but the dance thing, like, you should do that. Like, all this, like, expositional detail. And your comment was like, oh, my God, this is so written. And that's how it feels. It's just, like, it doesn't feel like real dialogue. It doesn't feel like characters actually having a meaningful exchange. We don't learn anything about who the characters are. It's just, like, all this, like, arbitrary and irrelevant information about, you know, like details about who they were, who they think they are, something like that, but doesn't actually inform who they are in this movie or what decisions they're making. And this conversation, like, it goes down the stairs and it proceeds into the kitchen, and then this other girl walks in, and I don't know her name, because like there's 3 girls in this movie who have dark hair, who they made, like, we know Helena. I don't know the other two's name. I have to look it up to remember. But this other one walks in, and she sort of like makes her presence known. She's like, "Hi, I'm here." Like, she may as well have just said like, "It's me time." And and I just remember, like, this is in the middle of this exchange, and the volume of that conversation drowned out so this girl could walk in and throw attention on her. And I mean, that actually at least told us like, oh, she needs the spotlight. But then nothing ever came of that afterwards. But it like in that moment, it's just like, what is going on here? Because like I thought we were supposed to be paying attention to this bullshit exchange, and now you're letting me know, no, we don't have to, because we're purposely even drowning out the sound so we can know this girl's presence. And she just walks in amongst like, there's like 100 girls in this sorority too, just walking about, and we don't linger with any of them. Like I'm even thinking back to like 1974 Black Christmas, where when the Moaner calls the first time, and they're all just like standing around listening to it. There's like the one who we don't know her name, but we know her as Jennifer Coolidge lookalike.
Jennifer Coolidge, yes.
And at least there's that. There's like 50 extras walking up and down those stairs, and it's just like I don't get a sense of sorority, community, anything. No. Like this just seems like they're literally like backstage at a show before it starts.
Right. Speaking of, there's only two other things that I have to say with regard to character, because we also need to move on to 2006. But
2006 is relatively easy. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. So with this one, another thing, just with regard to like Landon also and his interactions, I remember just thinking like, everything that he says after the whole Mean Girls sing of finger pointing, like, you know, you're a rapist, and then he runs after Riley after that, after she tells a room full of people like what happened, and he's there, he hears it, and he goes up to her, he's like, wow, I just wanted to stop you and say that was really impressive. And I'm like, do you know how people talk? Do you when was the last time you ever declared to a room full of people something really awful, earth-shifting that happened to you like that, and then you walked out, and the guy who you just met, who has had his hands in his pockets and is just kind of shrugging and going like, well, it might be really nice to see you sometime, chases after you and says, hey, you know, the way you just declared that to the room, that was really impressive. It's like, what? I get what I get what they're trying to do. Didn't work, because I don't know a guy who talks like that. I don't know a girl who would hear that and go, yeah. I mean, the response would be, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're like the writing here has, and I don't want to like throw a label on Black Christmas 2019 to say this is a man-hating movie, but like the way that like the male characters are written it's very one note. Like they're either, you know, the Bryans or they're the Landons, and there is no in between.
Or you're Nate and you're Landon in the beginning, and then you're kind of like a live-in Landon, but then you turn into a Brian.
But that's the thing with Nate, and Nate was probably the most interesting male character as well. Jesus. And that's not saying much. But the same thing happened to him, where it was like there was almost like it wasn't the ooze, it was like some sort of thrall, because he was like, oh my god, I'm getting a migraine or something, like whatever it was that was turning him into this jerk. Yeah. But it was like, yeah, that's the thing. It's just like, is it the ooze? Is it like something in the air?
Or is he just secretly an asshole? Which also would have been a valid thing. That exists too. He's a nice guy until you cross the wrong line, or, you know, whatever for him is the wrong line. And I know so many of my friends, women, who have been with that guy, where they don't trust the nice guy thing right off the bat, you know, now, because they've been with too many guys who they thought were nice, and then they found out they turn a corner, and it's like, oh no, you're just a fucking monster who likes to play nice to get me to drop my guard, and then you go in for the kill. Fuck you. That would have been interesting. So yeah,
I mean, to play with something like that, and for that character to like actually show up at the end or have some relevancy, rather than just coming back in and when she's just like, be quiet, and he's just like, what's going on? Like the last thing that you need to do when someone is like, there's a killer in the house, shut your mouth.
If you're really concerned, again, characters are all over the place, creating conflict because they need to, I guess.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I saw something about like comparing the two to like 2006 and 2019, about how like the viewpoints are very misogynistic in 2006, and like these are like women who are not really supporting one another or whatever, whereas like the 2019 version, like they're supporting one another, and it's just like, are they though? Like they're just, I don't even get a sense of who these characters are, because it's just like the only time that they really come together and have a thing or when they do, it's always like there's some sort of strife. There's some sort of argument or something. And like, like in that scene before all hell breaks loose. And when I guess the first girl goes up into the attic and gets killed when she's separated from everyone else. The part where Chris comes in because she's uploaded the video onto YouTube or whatever, and 50,000 people. It's had 50,000 views already, which I think is hilarious because I'm just thinking about like the ad revenue for that. But the thing is like, there's like Riley's like, how could you do this? And this is a betrayal and yada yada yada. And there's, you talked about this. There's like this pushback. It's just like, these are not sisters that are in support of one another. Like the only difference here is like that when they realize that their friends are starting to get picked off and are like the sisters are being picked off one by one, they're actually like grieving them, like, oh my God, oh, girl number 3 with the dark hair, like it's that doesn't really exist as much in the 2006 version. So like that's here, but again, it's just like, it's so disingenuous because I don't know who these characters are and I don't know their relationships to the other characters. Like those are relevant.
I agree.
And the only other thing I wanted to say about character here is we don't have a Mrs. Mack in the 2019 version, which is very unfortunate. And I feel like the stand-in for that is that Mrs. Mack is actually the Carrie Elwes character, but like he's the Mrs. Mack of the fraternity.
Yeah, actually, that makes sense.
Yeah, I
don't like
there is a Claudette.
Yes, the cat.
Yeah, instead of Claude.
Yeah.
And then you have this like the character Fran, who, and she her purpose was just to be there and like and have that ridiculous. I guess we'll talk more about that in the kills, but like the complete rip-off of another movie, but
yes, I know who you're talking about now.
2006. Do you want to get the ball rolling on those characters? Yeah.
What I will say is everything that you just said about not being able to tell them apart, this one goes in the exact opposite direction. It's not nuanced at all. Everybody's kind of like proclaiming to the hills, this is who I am, like with their first line. Like, I'm really nice. I'm really sweet. Well, I'm really just kind of like all about whatever. And then, no, you're not. Shut up. I'm the one who criticizes you. Like, I mean, they're all like, hello, girls. Merry Christmas. Like, they're all kind of big, broad signs on their chests declaring, this is who I am. I'm the one who's drinking too much. Yeah. I mean, and it applies all across the board, but it does get me to know who they are. It used to be something that would be like a burr in my shoe, but when it was the only thing that existed other than the 1974 one, and I feel like that captured nuance and really gave me the solidarity in the community and everything like that. And this was just kind of like boldly declaring, here's the solidarity. But the thing is, I do buy it because even though there's a completely unnuanced stance of sisterhood, kind of like that they double down on, I feel. The thing that gets me, I think, is probably the performances, is that the actresses get to really move into these parts. The cast, we got fucking Katie Cassidy, who I think is like the unsung hero of everything that she does, because she never gets like the good part, but she's always good in anything that she's in. She was in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, if anybody doesn't know. She played the character Chris in that, and basically the Tina, and the movie really should have been about her. It would have been a better movie. All of her work is pretty untouchable in that. But and then she's also a thankless role, I feel, on Arrow, the TV series about the DC superhero. Yeah. She plays Laurel, and she does incredible work, but they just keep writing her these shitty scenes where she just doesn't get it.
Yeah, we talked about her because we did the remake versus original Final Girls, and we talked about Jess Bradford versus Kelly Presley is her name in this. And I also mentioned that I don't agree with that because she was actually a character on the Melrose Place reboot, which, I mean, it didn't set the world on fire, but she was the best part of that show, other than the returning original cast members. But she was the only one that really kind of went toe to toe with Amanda Woodward, Heather Locklear.
Ooh, she's so good. She's so good. See, I would love to see that. When is that getting on DVD?
It's it's
never
not great. But I think it's probably streaming somewhere. Maybe
I'll find it.
No, like the casting here is great. Because you like, that's the thing. It's just like these they're not really characters, they're caricatures. And this movie, by and large, like, it feels kind of, maybe not like a comic book, but like a little graphic novel-y. I mean, this came out in 2006, which I think is when Sin City came out. And I'm just like, was getting like vibes of that with like Billy and like his jaundiced skin. And I think that there was like a character, I only saw Sin City once, but I recall like the usage of color just to sort of like show one particular character who might have been colored yellow throughout anything, because that's back when like graphic novel adaptations were really a big thing, so it kind of had that vibe to it. Like there's just a very vibrant and like campiness to these characters that they just they jump off of the page. And sorry, I like completely interrupted you because you were talking about the cast. So by all means, please continue.
Oh, sure. So we've got also Lacey Chabert, Michelle Trachtenberg, Mary Elizabeth Winstead playing the privileged Southern girl, which I feel is like a role she would never be cast as today, because I think her niche is she's moved into kind of Final Girl. We've learned, she is also really, really good in that position as well. But I mean, even her Southern accent I found kind of adorably and I mean adoringly, because I don't want to condescend to her. I worship Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I think it's adoringly laughable because it's kind of there. Like she's sitting there kind of talking a little drawl, but every now and then it sounds like she's not, and then she'll slide back in a little, and I'm just like, oh my god, look at you, you're so uncomfortable. I love this. It's just, I don't know, it hits all the right notes for me.
I didn't really pick that up at all. Maybe it just wasn't.
Oh really?
Attention. Yeah.
Oh okay.
It must have been very understated, that because I didn't get that.
Because also like Mrs. Mack is in this one, and she's played by Andrea Martin, alum from 1974. Phil. Your favorite character. I love Phyllis. But when Mrs. Mack, she even comments on it when she gets in the car with Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character Heather, and the windshield's frozen, and she holds up the brush like, get out and brush, and Heather just kind of looks at her like, what's that? She just kind of says, are you kidding me? And she gets out of the car and she says, privileged bitch, frigid southern princess, while she's scraping the ice off the windshield, knowing Heather has never had to do that. And that felt very kind of Mrs. Mack to me. Like, I love these girls, but you know what? I will talk shit about them when they get on my nerves. And that's who Mrs. Mack is. And even though they're both very different characters, she's not an alcoholic in this one. But they got a sliver of it.
Just a great cast, like you said, just like recognizable faces who they have experience, working in movies. In I don't know if, I mean, obviously Mary Elizabeth has like done a lot of genre films since, but I mean, like, obviously like Michelle Trachtenberg from Buffy, Lacey. Is it Chabert?
Yes.
There's like Charbet.
Oh God, no, it's Chabert. It's French.
Chabert. For Mean Girl, Gretchen. Yeah. But yeah, like, they're just like instantly recognizable. Like, instantly, like, they each bring their own flavor to everything, and even like the I don't want to call them unknowns, but there's, like the other girls in the sorority, like the one who I guess is sort of like the Margot Kidder proxy.
Lauren.
She really,
she's
like,
the stand-in for Barb.
She really makes an impression. Like, even the one, I think her name's Megan or whatever. Like, we're barely with her, but it's just like, I know who that character. It's like the other blonde there. But it's just like she makes an impression. Eve that we talked about before.
Yes.
Like I think like the one that we spend the least amount of time with is Claire, who weirdly enough is the only one who's like named after their counterpart from the original. But even then, like she's just like she serves the purpose of what she needs to do. Lee, even like her sister who comes in and she's just like she comes in there and she's just chewing up the scenery, you know, everywhere. And then like the one guy, I mean, like there's more male characters in the movie, but like I guess like the one guy who is Kyle is his name,
yes,
played by Kate Hudson's brother. That's his claim to fame.
Okay,
What's his name?
Oliver Hudson.
Oliver. I remember him in Scream Queens.
Oh, I never watched. So okay.
Yeah. But you know, he was there. Like he was memorable enough. Like in it. Like maybe not as much as like the sisters, but you know, still like you know, everyone was kind of did the purpose of what you know what they were there to do. And
he was memorable enough that when what's her name? You said her name. Megan. Yeah. When Megan's sitting there watching the video and everything like that, like it's not the best, you know, like video quality when you like, you know, film things playing on a computer, especially in, you know, 2006. But the fact that like he's behind her, he's the one having sex with her, and I have seen him once, you know, like with Katie Cassidy a little earlier, and now I see him in the video and I know exactly who that is. Well, I'm like, oh.
I mean, they you know did that like it was pretty easy to read because like his phone rang and then we kind of cut to outside of the window and we see her in this heated argument. We don't know what she's saying, but we can tell that she yells and then she hangs up the phone and throws it, and then we cut back to the car and he hangs up, so we know that was a conversation that was had. We don't know what it is, so it's like again visual storytelling. I mean, it's not like a great example of it, but it's like it does like, the trick.
But you say easy, and yet 2019 wasn't able to master that in several exames that we gave. So at least it's something. That's the only reason I bring it up. Yeah. It's something compared to 2019.
Yeah.
I mean, that pretty much, we've said it all as far as these. You're right. These characters are really easy. Like, I mean, broad strokes, but memorable. What more can you ask for?
And we're already talking about like Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, and that's like one of the, in my opinion, greatest movies of all time, and that's what that movie is. It's just broad stroke characters who are just there to just be their whatever their archetype is to the umpth degree and just jump off the page. So it's just like there's you know, just because something might seem silly or hokey or whatever doesn't mean that it's not quality. It doesn't mean that it's not doing the trick.
No, there's dimension to it. It doesn't mean they're cardboard cutouts. It's just like it's like experiencing characters in 3D as opposed to 2D on like, you know, a 2D screen. But I think but when it lands for me is when they, again, the double down on the sisterhood thing. I really feel it when Katie Cassidy or Kelly is standing there, and she's standing, because that's something that never really happened in the first movie. She's standing off against Mrs. Mack, and they're two characters finally, like in a movie, who are actually like have opposing points of view, and they're arguing, but it's the kind of argument that I'm going, you know, because they're both right. Like, yes, I understand the points of getting out of here and getting away to safety as soon as possible, but I also understand the point, and it also relates to 1974 with Jess and her decision to go and leave the house or to stay, because you also don't want to leave any of your sisters behind in case they may still be alive and need your help. And they're having that argument, and again, there's less nuance to it. It's much more about boom, boom, boom. But
I mean, I would say that there's lots of nuance to it. There's way more nuance as opposed to like what we see in 2019, because that is just very written, like you said, and it comes down to it. And that's why I would push back on the argument that like the sisterhood representation in 2019 is more positive than 2006, because it's the same across the board. I think that it's just told much better in 2006. Yes, it's not as apparent because you have these characters who are just like, you know, the general air in the atmosphere is just like, these are girls who hate each other. But when push comes to shove, they're actually there to support each other, which I think is much more interesting, as opposed to like, you know, these fair-weathered friends is how I feel about the 2019, where they're like, oh my God, isn't this so great? Yeah, we're going to go and do this Mean Girls dance routine of the thing. And oh my God, let me give you this hair clip. Where then it just turns out that when things actually get like bleak or dangerous, they're more like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh well. Like our friend, but then, you know, they keep going on. So I'd rather see a scenario where there is conflict and strife, but then the characters still like have a like some sort of meaningful connection in that, as opposed to, you know, what we get where it's just like, yeah, this represents sisterhood just because, you know, of some bullshit fake dialogue.
Right, it feels bolder in 2006 because it all becomes encompassed also, I think, between an exchange between Kyle and Kelly, where he's leaving and she's talking about, like, I think it's Kelly and Kyle, and Lee is there, and something happens where he says something like, you don't even have a sister, and Lee kind of backs her up, just saying like, yes, she does, because she understands this sisterhood is a real sisterhood for Kelly, that these are actual people in your life who mean something to you. And I found that it could have been really cheesy, but I found it actually really charming and endearing. It made me care about what was going to happen for almost the rest of the movie. Yeah. So, yeah. No, absolutely. The only other thing I'd say about character is that, I mean, we actually have the presence of a heavy or heavies that are not a hive mind, not some sort of supernatural black ooze in a bust. So, you know, that definitely lends itself better to this one. So I think that in terms of character, it's 2006 by a landslide. Me too.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all we have for the preview of this episode. So if you want to check out the full thing, remember you can head over to patreon.com/ZackCherry, ZackCherry, and subscribe at the Freddy Krueger tier, and you'll get access to this episode and all the past back catalog of Cherry Picker After Darks. It is a lot of fun. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will be right back.